If we could get quiet as we get ready to begin the program, that's appreciated. As always, it's a pleasure to see you this morning. Thank you for being here. We appreciate you. We want to make sure that we get started. Could I have your attention, please? Can we have quiet, please, as you're coming in? So we want to make sure that we have time for you all to hear the message and the presenter on today. One of the things that I do want to do is be engaged with you around protocol in terms of coming in to Crown Forum and being here and being at least respectful of the requests that are being made. Just so you know, we're asking for you all, typically, I don't want you to move now, we're asking for you to move forward so that you can be in conversation with the speaker. Now, I know there has been some commentary around some leeriness around ensuring that you all are able to maintain your health, right? Especially with us having removed the mask mandate and whatnot, and that certainly is reasonable. So be encouraged in maintaining space, but as we're asking you to come in, we're asking you to come in out of respect for the presenter and the speaker. That's just general, all right? Other housekeeping in general that will... You're going to have to stop that. Other housekeeping in general that's important for you to know is that the QR codes, the hiccup that existed last week is no longer there. You will be made available to you the QR code so that you can scan and put in your name, first and last, your M number, and your seat number. That, in addition to the prompt, is required for you to document attendance for today. For those of you all who are wanting attendance from the week before last and the week before that, I think it's the 6th and the 20th. Hold on one second. Sorry about that. In terms of attendance for the 6th and the 20th, what I said to you all is that you would get credit for that, even if it doesn't show up in Blackboard for you now. Know that you have 2 attendances that are yours that you will get credit for on the docs, right? So that's important for you to know. So without further ado, we will formally start our program with the introduction today, all right? Thank you.
All right, good morning, everyone. I am Michael Henry, a graduating senior political science major from Fayetteville, North Carolina, and I do serve as a prison education ambassador here for the Andrew Young Center for Global Leadership, and I will be introducing our speaker for this morning. Rodney Spivey Jones graduated from BARD through the BARD Prison Initiative, BPI, in 2017 with a degree in social studies. His story is featured throughout Ken Burns and Lynn Novick's award-winning documentary, College Behind Bars. He was a founding member of the BPI Debate Union, which made international news for beating Harvard in 2015. His senior project, Messianic Black Bodies, which is a feature storyline in the documentary, was edited to include current events and published as Black Disfigurement and the American Hieroglyphics of Race in the A-Line Journal. He has also published college programs and prison show The Value of Educating Every American in the Appeal. Rodney serves on the board of advisors for Emilio, a not-for-profit organization dedicated to strengthening community ties with incarcerated people and expanding access to educational opportunities. He is a public speaker and travels across the country to participate in panel discussions and to advocate for democratizing access to higher learning. He is a member of a research team that is currently studying the civic and social effects of college and prison programs. He tutors at the BPI Micro College in Harlem, Just Community Leadership, and is a writing consultant. Rodney is currently writing his first book and plans to apply to law school in the near future. At this time, please help me welcome Mr. Rodney Spivey Jones.
Good morning, everyone. Before I get into what I have to share with you this morning, I have to thank you all for inviting me into this space, and especially Kipton and Shaneed, even though she told me I shouldn't thank her anymore. I thanked her a lot this week, which has been a wonderful week. I say thank you often because some of you probably know that I've spent some time in prison. I've spent nearly 20 years in prison. I just came home just over a year ago. And, thank you. Thank you. Some of you have probably been touched by jail or prison, the prison system in some way, I'm sure of it. I won't ask you to raise your hands. I'm pretty sure that most of this audience will probably raise their hand. So you know that it's one of the most oppressive, darkest places in this country. So to be here, to share this space with all of you is wonderful, and I'm so grateful for it. So thank you for having me here this morning. Now, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time just taking up all of the space. I want to make sure that we're having a lot of give and take, so I'm going to be very brief with my comments, but I think it's important that I at least give you some backstory. But before I do that, I'm reminded, I hear my debate coach in my ear saying, Rodney, what happened to the hook? You need to hook your audience. I don't have a hook, but since you are all here, and many of you, probably most of you, will help lead this country, I think it's important to at least say this before I get into it. Incarcerated people should have the right to vote, period. There is no rational argument to justify denying anyone the right to vote simply because they've committed a crime or have been accused of committing a crime. That is ridiculous. So thank you for allowing me to share that. So here's a few things I want you to know as far as the backstory to the article. So if you've read the article, you know that, and as Michael just said here, you know that the article is a condensed version of my senior project, a research paper I had to write and barred in order to graduate. So I won't spend much time on that. I want to focus on three things. The first thing I want you to know is that I had no idea whatsoever that I'd be writing about black disfigurement, or that I'd be considering the question, what does it mean to be American? I was focused on something entirely different. I wanted to know what were the causes of crime and poverty in the communities that looked like mine, that I came from, in the urban communities, the experts called it. And I read and listened a lot to what the experts had to say. And here's what I discovered. There are two core arguments. Of course, there's nuances on both sides of the argument, but there was two core arguments that I continued to hear over and over again and read over and over again. On one side of the argument, you hear experts make the argument that it's lack of personal responsibility and single-parent households. That was the cause of crime and poverty. That didn't resonate with me. In fact, it angered me a little bit. On the other side of the argument, experts claim that, well, the other experts are lying, or they're really missing what's going on here. They're supporting this color blindness argument here. What's really going on is structural inequalities, racial inequalities. We should focus on that. That resonated with me more. But I thought both sides were missing something. I asked myself, well, what about the discourses, the meta-discourses, the ideas, the words, the symbols, the statistics that shape subjectivities, the way African Americans move throughout the world, how they see themselves? And how in turn does that then shape our perceptions of opportunity? Because you can live in an environment full of opportunity, but if you don't perceive it being there, if you perceive only obstacles, then what difference does it make? So that was confusing to me, and it was something that I wanted to research. I thought that I'm going to research this question, and this will be my contribution. This will be my moment to talk back to all of the experts that I was reading. But this is 2014, 2015. That's the second thing I want you to keep in mind. I don't see any recognition here in anyone's faces when I say 2014, 2015. But perhaps when I mention these names, an image is conjured up. Eric Garner, Mike Brown, Laquan McDonald, Tamir Rice, Philando Castile. These names are constantly coming through everything that I'm reading. And at the time, I'm focusing on language. And I'm looking at the media, and I'm reading news articles and magazine articles, and I'm just scouring social media to the extent that I could while being incarcerated. And I kept getting confronted with all of the narratives that were being created about these people that were killed. I learned that Laquan McDonald was high on PCP or something. That's what the media said. And the question for me was, Laquan McDonald was 17 and shot 17 times. Wasn't that the most important thing? I heard that Tamir Rice, who was 12 years old, he was very big for his age. He looked very old for his age. He had a 36 size waist. What relevance did that have? And so I'm sitting inside of a prison cell, and I'm hearing all of these narratives. And it forced me to pivot. So no longer am I focusing on language to see what's the subtext there that shapes our subjectivities and our perceptions of opportunity. I'm wondering, why do we keep coming up with these narratives to justify these killings? And I became angry. That's the third thing you should know. Anger is a great motivator when you need to write about something. It starts to push you to look at things from a very passionate perspective, and before you know it, you're putting words on the page. So if you ever have any issues with writer blocks, get angry over the topic that you're writing about. And that's the third and final thing I want to talk about. I write in the senior project, and you'll see it in the article too, something to the extent, if America plumbed the depths of black flesh, what would it find? We know the answer. Throughout American history, that's been done. And it's found everything it wanted to discover. Deviancy, ugliness, inferiority. And I'm sitting inside of a cell supposed to write a senior project and submit this to a college. I'm supposed to be objective in some way. But I couldn't help but to hear the public talk about me. I was an inmate, a violent criminal. Some of the men I knew were nonviolent criminals. We were all criminals. Some of us were rehabilitated criminals. No one I knew was challenging the value that we were attributing to these categories, that we were stripping each other of our humanity, of our individuality. Even well-meaning people were using this language, this seemingly neutral language. Prisoners were using it. Prison reform advocates were using it. And it really drove me to write about this topic and try to discover what's the point of all of this. So the realization that the country was having a conversation about my worth, my value, is something that forced me to pick up the pen and compelled me to write about this topic. I want to end, before we do Q&A, that's the backstory, but before we do Q&A, I think it's important to end with the afterword of the senior project, because I think it does a pretty good job of summing up what I want to say to you all and leave you with. During the course of my senior project, I developed a hyper-awareness of the many often insidious ways in which society disfigures the personhood of marginalized people. I noticed the attempt of so many to lump disparate elements into the category of blackness or some other category, meant to house the unworthy, categories such as offender or inmate. It is difficult to live, to function in one of these categories. It begins to feel like scurf that one cannot scrub clean from the body. I am an irredeemable, trapped in one of these crippling categories for the undeserving. I experienced a range of emotions. It pained me to hear the narrative swirling around so many fallen bodies, to see the images of dead or dying people on television, in newspapers, and in magazines over and over again. With each image and the predictable justification for shooting and killing some unarmed person, the psychic pain intensified. My heart ached, and I cried when I heard the 4-year-old daughter of Philando Castile's fiance, Diamond Reynolds, say, "It's okay, Mommy. I'm right here with you." This baby heard the pop of gunfire and witnessed Castile's slow death. We all did. I'm reluctant to use the word anger. In America, anger and blackness and offender is considered a volatile mixture. But everyone, every single one of us should seethe when injustice is rampant and the nation is divided about whether or not the deaths of Laquan McDonald, of Mike Brown, of Eric Garner, of Trayvon Martin, insert here, are worth mourning. Mourning is not a question of race and bodies. It is a question of humanity. Perhaps we will always mourn the death of Emmett Till. Remember his face, once soft and plump with the freshness of youth, tattered, punctured, and crushed to the bone, now inhuman. As I write this, the deaths, the justifications, and the protests and uprisings continue. Bo, Rakia, Trayvon, Eric, Mike, Freddie, Sandra, Tamir, Jordan, so many to mourn. Perhaps we have no choice but to demand, and attempt to resurrect our personhoods. I wonder what Bo may have become had he made it back to Chicago intact and alive. If society had not criminalized Bo's presence, his whistling, a very minor indiscretion, if one can even call it that. Perhaps he would have been a preacher like his mother and grandmother had hoped. Perhaps he would have preached about the power of love and forgiveness. Or maybe he would have played professional football, baseball, as he had hoped. Hope. Hope has always been the fuel propelling activists forward. BLM activists hope that one day in America, the country in which they were born, will value black lives. Let me say it plainly. The black body is a prison of flesh, and the truth is unforgiving. African Americans can no more relinquish their signifying black bodies than they can change the history of this nation. But they must continue to demand. Thank you. So any questions? I'll take any questions. So even though it's this talk has been giving you the backstory of the article, any questions I'll take. So see a hand over here.
How you doing?
Hey, you look familiar, man.
Yes, sir. We spoke last year when you were here visiting. Marcellus Kirkland, class of 22.
Right.
So I've recently had some experience as a high school teacher, and really witnessing firsthand from a teacher's perspective the school-to-prison pipeline and how you said the dehumanization of black bodies really is prevalent in both systems. Could you speak to some of your experiences in education as a student before your experience as incarceration and how that might have connected?
So my experience as a student, like in high school, and compared to how it was incarcerated. Is that the question?
yes, but also essentially, do you see any connection in your experience that facilitated, essentially through your education, your later experiences as an incarcerated person?
Oh, man. So prison, we all know prison is a punitive space. To a large extent, high school was too. There wasn't a huge support system of individuals willing to catch me when I was falling. Right? There were a few individuals, and they were great. But when you don't have a strong support system, and I spoke about having, perceptions, right? Perceptions of opportunity. If it's not strong, you can see those hands that are reaching out to help you as obstacles. And I think I fell victim to that. And in prison was much the same. It's a punitive environment. And you want to be free in prison. So some things that look like help, that are supposed to be help, they don't look like help. They're just obstacles. So that's the correlation I would make between the two, as far as being a student in high school and being incarcerated. Thank you for the question.
Hello, my name is William Butler, but I go by Billy. I'm a senior from Santa Ana, California, and I'm an Africana Studies major.
Nice.
Did you by any chance, while you were incarcerated or perhaps before, read Frantz Fanon's Black Skin, White Mask?
Oh, he was whispering in my ear the entire time I was writing this project.
Yes,
Yeah.
because just to make reference to what you just said, you said, and I'm just paraphrasing here, of course, so if America were to plunge into black flesh, it would find an array of different things, and you listed different psychoanalytical terms which Fanon used in the preface of Black Skin, White Mask, in reference to Aimé Césaire, who is a negritude poet.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, what was the influence that he played while you were writing your
Great question.
your essay? Yes.
There's a lot. So if you remember from the preface, Fanon also says, I say this, and I'm paraphrasing too, I say this knowing that I might make my black brother angry. The black man is not a man. You remember that? I wasn't taking, in the senior project and in the article, I wasn't taking black for granted. And of course, we're told not to do that. If you're earning an education, you're in academia, you know that race is a social construct. And I was looking at the black body in the same way. And Fanon was also arguing that in order to free the quote-unquote black man, you need to break that racial dialectic. That needs to vanish, that black-white dialectic. And I think he was arguing, someone might get upset here about this. At least I upset a lot of my fellow students in BPI. That black, that identity is a hindrance. That the only way that black can exist is if white exists. And the only way you can have two is if you have this superior, inferior paradigm. So in order for the black man to be free, he must relinquish his blackness, and that's in the preface, right? Someone's clap. Oh, that's nice. That doesn't happen often, man. It's a serious thing, though, because Fanon is arguing that to some extent we need to experience the social death. Who wants to experience the social death? That's what I just came from, a social death. That is scary. It's hard to do. And how do you even do that in the society that we live in? How do you relinquish blackness, something that's the core of the United States? This racial, you need it. What happens if you don't have it? But, that was something that I explored in the final chapter of my senior project and spoke about just a bit in the condensed version. Thank you for that question, man.
How you doing? I'm Patrick Dennis, a junior psychology major from Brooklyn, New York. And I just want to say I appreciate you for coming out and just bringing up, your past and bringing it here, because I know it can be traumatic to go back in that past. But I actually want to ask a question regarding trauma. So how did, my question is, how can brothers in the community be more open and understanding of each other's past and trauma so we can build more unity in our community? And when you were in prison, did that happen? Did brothers step up for each other when they were disrespected by guards or COs? Was it a community, or was it more every man for himself? And then a second question, I know I'm asking a lot, is you brought up Emmett Till and you brought up brothers who were brutally killed and dehumanized by police officers. Me and my parents talk about how when it's shown on the news, it's desensitized and it's normalized. How can we not normalize it and have it like a trend where we're like, oh, Black Lives Matter, or oh, a brother got killed and posted for a month and it dies out? How can we use it as motivation, not just to uplift black people as human beings, but as the human race as one? So how can we motivate it and turn it into a movement that's consistent and becomes a lifestyle?
This is going to sound so cynical. I'm going to answer that last question first. This is going to sound not hopeful at all. And I argue this in the article as well. It's very, very heartbreaking what happened to Emmett Till. We know that Mamie Till Mobley, his mother, decided to have an open casket funeral. And, and of course that was symbolic, right? And it helped unite a lot of people around the civil rights movement. What I argue in the article is that two things happened. We sort of lost Emmett Till as an individual because he became a symbol. And he became a symbol for both sides. If we have two sides, of course, I'm being a little reductive. But if we have white supremacists on one side, people who are wedded to the idea of whiteness and white superiority and Anglo-Saxon America and all of those things, and on the other side, those of us arguing for equality. On this side, arguing for equality, Emmett Till represented everything that was wrong with America. And it was a moment, the funeral was a moment to push this into the faces of everyone who refused to see. On the other side, those who are wedded to the idea of superiority and Americanisms. And by Americanism, I mean liberty, justice, equality for white people. Emmett Till represented everything that was wrong with niggers. He brought this on himself. But on both sides, he became a symbol, and he lost his humanity. I don't know if there's a way to show black trauma, black pain in a way that allows us to see an individual as an individual. I think we always fall into that trap of symbolism. And that's part of what I mean by messianic black body. I'm not just talking about flesh and blood, sentient people. I'm speaking about symbols, right? The other question, I want to make sure I'm being conscious of the time. The next question that you mentioned, I think you were talking about trauma, how to use trauma.
I was saying is, how can we be more conscientious of others' trauma and be more open and understanding to build more unity in our communities? And in jail, was that in actuality? Did brothers step up for each other? Did brothers be like, okay, I understand he's going through it, I'm not gonna...
Yeah. So a lot of that really depends on how the prison is run. So the last prison I was in was a medium. It's called Fishkill Correctional Facility. And I was a part of a program called Rehabilitation Through the Arts. And this was during a time, during COVID. And we had this empty room because civilians weren't coming into the prison. So I took it upon myself, me and a few other men, we took over this room and we used it as a space to commune and speak about that trauma. That is rare because often you guys know, prison is controlled. Like everything you do in prison is controlled. And you don't often have access to those kinds of rooms. So, but we want to do it. We want to do it. But it's not always that opportunity. And as far as speaking up when an officer is disrespecting a prisoner, that's an individual, that's a case-by-case basis. So I might do it, but 500 other people are not going to do that. There's too much at stake. Hope I answered your questions. Okay, good.
Hello. First and foremost, I want to thank you, Mr. Jones, for joining us today. So thank you for you being here. My name is Alonzo Fedrick. I'm a biology and chemistry double major, senior biology and chemistry double major, public health minor on the pre-MD PhD track. I'm from Miami, Florida. So my question for you today is, walking in the dual identity of both having the label prisoner and student at the same time, how exactly did you wrestle with that reality? And kind of what were the social, I guess, implications of that and kind of reactions towards the weight of both of those labels and walking in that duality?
That's a great question. So I always saw myself as a student first. There's more value we attribute to that category, that identity. I always saw myself as a student first. However, the two ran up against each other. There was a lot of tension between prisoner and student. So if you watch the film, and I hope you all get a chance to watch College Behind Bars if you haven't, there's an episode when I actually get into trouble because I'm writing a college paper that happens to have some profanity in it. And the prison officials get a hold of that paper, and they write me a misbehavior report. So that's when you see student and prisoner bump up against each other. So on one hand, you're expected to be curious and to just speak your mind. On the other hand, as a prisoner, you're censured. And so and it's very hard to navigate, but I tried to navigate as a student first and a prisoner. That just happened to be for the moment. That was temporary, but I'll always be a student. Thank you for that question.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Tyler Green. I'm a junior sociology major with some minors from East Orange, New Jersey. And I wanted to make another allusion to Frantz Fanon's Black Skin, White Masks, as my brother Billy noted, and the power of language and how it's world forming. I'm currently doing some work with the Rand Institute on analyzing data sets with criminality to create narratives for that. And so I wanted to know, how can we use language intentionally so as not to further dehumanization when creating narratives, as someone who doesn't have experience with, obviously, prison or the complex itself?
Very good. I think first, with language, there's always the possibility of, whenever you have categories, you're attributing a value to that category. And when you put people in that category, you're attributing value to those people, right? We can't escape that. I think the most important thing is to always interrogate those categories and to pivot when you need to. That's the best I can offer with that. That you have to continuously interrogate those categories because categories take on meaning over time. They evolve. Today, black is palatable. It is. I argued in the article, again, this might upset some people, that is, in some ways, it's the 21st century version of nigger. Nigger at one point was acceptable. Blackness is acceptable. What's some of the value that we attribute to blackness? Not everyone else in this room, but just in general in this country. What does it mean to be in that category? That's probably controversial, and that's okay.
Jeremy Fuller.
I see you, man. How you doing, man?
Good to see you, brother. Good to see you again, man, and thank you for being here. Kind of staying where we are with Fanon and the body. And I think in the end you said that the body is a prison of flesh. And I've just kind of been in a place lately, and I guess my question is, how do we move beyond the body, right? If we think about, even thinking about something like Maslow's, like when we think about that base level of understanding, right, those bodily needs, and then moving towards self-actualization. If we are kept in that prison of the body, then how do we get to those higher levels, right? Because I feel like a lot of the evil that's been perpetrated against Black people, for less of a better term, is to keep him in a purely physical form, right? To keep him as a body. Like, even if you think about Coates or The Bluest Eye, like those things talk about how the Black man is kept purely body. So how do we move beyond body?
That's a good question. That's a question that's asking for hope. And my article does not do that at all. We need to see each other as individuals. So this is great, but it's hard to have a one-on-one conversation like this. So sit down, break bread, have deep conversations, and get to know one another. That's the best I can offer for that, man. Like, really get to... I think those books that you mentioned, it really speaks to how important distance is in maintaining the paradigm, that race paradigm where we're just looking at each other as bodies. You need emotional and physical distance in order to do that. But when you close the gap, you can't just see a body. You see all the things that you have in common and all the things that distinguish you as individuals and not simply groups, but individuals. So that's what I would offer for that. That's a great question. Thank you for that. Thank you, Jeremy. Good to see you. I see you too. All right.
All right, and due to time, these last two will be our last two questions.
Good morning. Thank you for coming. My name is Jordan Lohman. I'm a senior political science major from Riverdale, Georgia. I was wondering that since you mentioned that you were attending law school, do you believe that we need more individuals being involved in the criminal justice system and in politics? Because back in the old days, it was many individuals who were involved with civil rights, with pastors, business owners, and lawyers. But nowadays, lawyers are often considered the only method of change in the Black community. Do you believe that we need more individuals besides lawyers to be involved in the change?
Short answer, yes. We need individuals from everywhere. As far as lawyers and other professions, I think we need as many faces that look like ours in as many places as possible. Bottom line.
Great morning, man. Great morning. This is your brother Yemakaya, business administration major from Richmond, Virginia. Hey, I didn't really want to make a question. I wanted to make a statement. I wanted to first just say, hey, I respect everything that you're saying right now. You know, a lot of the things in this world is censored. You know, many of our people respect censorship, you know, because as a people, you know, we call ourselves Black, as you said, and we're taught to live in the image of what it means to be Black. Mm-hmm. You know, and with us respecting censorship, you know, it cages out the fact for us to think what it means to be Black from a mental state instead of a physical. Mm-hmm. So I just want to applaud you on that, man.
Thank you.
Bro.
Thank you.
So we want to thank you all so much. Thank you for your presentation today. Mr. Henry, thank you so much for being a representative for the prison program here at Morehouse College. One of the things that's important, we want to make sure that you continue your conversation. So if you have questions that are still yet to be asked and or answered, please be in conversation with Mr. Spivey Jones here after we depart. So that you know, we're going to go ahead and sing Dear Old Morehouse. After we're finished there, we will have your QR codes are available as you exit. So if you can please stand and prepare, lock arms for DeGrove Morehouse.
So in case you may need this, the lock arms.
All right, okay. Are we lock arms on stage together?
Yeah, on stage, yeah. All right, okay. Okay, all right. Yeah.
Dear old Morehouse,
Dear old Morehouse, we have pledged our lives to thee, and forever, yea, forever, give ourselves in loyalty, true forever, to old Morehouse may we be, so to bind each son the other into ties more brotherly. Put your hand up. Holy Spirit, make us as honest, true. To old Morehouse, in her eye